Hey guys, welcome back. Today I thought we would make some real-world, very realistic landscapes using actual satellite height map data, and we won't even have to use any sort of paid commercial software like World Machine or anything like that. We can do this all with tools that you already have, such as Photoshop and obviously Unreal Engine. So without further ado, let's get started and make our landscape terrain. So I'm just hitting modes and then the landscape tool here, which brings up this here little grid, and we'll have to change some settings here to sort of make our landscape make a bit more sense. So in our section size, we want to crank this up to 127 by 127. We want our sections to be 2 by 2 and our number of components to be 4 by 4. This will give us a maximum number of components set at 16 and our overall texture resolution, or landscape resolution rather, of 1017 by 1017. Now make note of this figure, this 1017 square, because we're going to use that to generate our height map. And then once you've got that done, just hit create. And here we have a landscape plane. So let's just actually go back to our place mode and then to the outliner, grab our player start and put him up above the level here. You can hit the end key, by the way, with basically any object in your scene to snap it back down to the nearest floor, nearest collision that it hits. So let's just hit play. We'll have a quick look here. What we have at the moment is just a big wide open plane that's really nothing special to look at. But now is where we can go get our height map for our terrain. And for that, I've used this tool online called the Tangrams height mapper, which has real-world satellite data, and you can export height maps to your heart's content. It's totally free to use for any project that you want. I'm just going to pick this little area in South Australia here because there's a nice mountain range next to a river, so I can show off some cool stuff. And all you need to do, it actually helps if you maximize the window. All you have to do is over here on the right, uncheck auto exposure because we want to handle that ourselves. And then find the region that you want and just hit export. Now because it'll just capture what's inside your browser, we're going to get a widescreen result. So what I did with my height maps was I took 2 screenshots. I zoomed in, exported one, then scrolled the map up and exported another one, and then stitch them together in Photoshop. So I'll just walk you through how I did that now. So we're finished here. Once you exported your maps, we can just forget about that and open up Photoshop. So then we'll just Control-O. I'll grab these 2 height maps that I exported. See, they're coming out as the resolution in the browser, which is totally okay. We can fix that up. And now we'll make a new document. And what we want to keep in mind is the resolution of our landscape, which was 1017 by 1017. We want the resolution to be 72. We want our color mode to be grayscale, and we want we want it to set to 16 bits per channel. This makes it compatible with the way that Unreal Engine handles height maps. So we should be all good to go forward with that. And here we have our height map, just white so far. So I'm just going to Control-A, Control-C to copy, dunk these guys in one at a time. We'll grab them both. Scale them down a bit so we can see. Actually, we'll try and not do that as much as we can. Now, the only tricky bit here really is just stitching them together. Not too hard. Here we go. I'll just be kind of quick just for the demonstration. So once they're stitched up, let's get myself some room here and we'll just size this in a way that makes sense. Well, what have I done? Don't want to do that. Here we go. So we'll keep as much of this resolution as we possibly can and make sure that we don't have any gaps over the edges. And here we have our basic height map, just about ready to go. In fact, we'll Control-Shift-S, make sure we save as a PNG, and we'll call this height_H for height map, and save that like that. And then head back to Unreal Engine, and we'll have a look at what happens to our landscape. So let's go to Modes, back into Landscape. Here in Target Layers, because there aren't any like paint layers yet, we've got the height map here. So let's right-click that, go Import from File, and we'll grab the file we just made, height_H, and hit Open. And here we see our initial landscape, and it's come straight from our satellite height data. So we're getting everything as it existed exactly in the file. Although there are immediately some problems, as you can probably see. This effect here that we're getting, this little stepped sort of weirdness, this is called terracing, and we'll fix that shortly. Plus, also, it's not very it's not very mountainous. It's not very high. Even our river here looks more like a ditch. So we can patch all this up, and we can do some funky things to our height map to make this look much more natural, much more real. So let's head on back to Photoshop and check it out. So the very first thing that we want to do is back up our height map so that we have an original here that we can always fall back on if we're not happy with the results, we want to start over or something like that. I'm just going to drag it into this folder here so that I can lock it just like that and turn it off. And now we have this working layer here that we can play with. And next thing we'll do is get an adjustment layer. We want exposure, and this is how we'll sort of adjust the height and that kind of thing. Because the service that we used to get our height map, it was going to use auto exposure for us. That will generate some really, really strange results. Here we have a bit more control, and we have this adjustment layer that we can handle. By the way, all of my Photoshop tools are on the right. I hope that doesn't confuse anybody. I'm left-handed, so when I use my Wacom pen, it's easier to sort of move my hand to the right to grab stuff. So let's have a look here at exposure. Let's pull this up a bit, something like 2.2, and we'll also correct the gamma a little bit. This is just changing the way that these high and low values are interacting with each other. Change the way that it will appear in the scene. And the next thing we can do is use, where are we? We can use the dodge and the burn tool to further make the high and low areas pop out. So I've got a soft brush will work with midtones here, and we can use our dodge tool to make our high points come up and seem a bit higher. So we'll brush that up a little bit. We'll come over here and switch to burn. A bigger brush, and so we can burn down some of these lower areas, even up here a bit, so we don't get tall, sort of spiky things jutting out of the landscape. And when we're happy with that, we'll Control-Shift-S. Remember to save as a PNG, and we'll overwrite this height_h file. Then back in the engine, go back to our landscape modes, right-click the height map, and then re-import. Here we go, that's more like it. So the change is immediate. Now we've got much nicer mountains, a bit more radical definition in the landscape itself, and it looks like we're finally getting somewhere. The next thing we'll take care of is the terracing. So let's jump back to Photoshop, and we'll do the next bit, which is, well, first of all, we want to duplicate our height map again, and we'll give this one a name. We'll call this one adjusted. We'll just call it dodge burn, so we know what we did to it, and then we'll drop that into our folder, and we have a new working file here. And now to eliminate this terracing, which when we zoom in, you can sort of see what's causing it, is these artifacts in the way that the textures happen. Once we've applied this adjustment layer, it's gone and created some weirdness between the colors, and also how it was exported from the website. So let's go up here to filter. We'll go down to noise, and then reduce noise. And you can see here in the preview, in fact we can see it in the live preview on our scene, it's going to eliminate a lot of that, a lot of those interesting things. So we'll keep preserve detail kind of low, strength kind of high. I don't think we'll need to sharpen. No, we'll keep sharpen down low. Remove JPEG artifact, hit OK, and that will help us along for the first bit, sort of add a texture wide kind of a blurring effect. But the next thing it will do is actually use a blurring effect. So we'll go filters, then blur, then a Gaussian blur, and just at a radius of 1 pixel. That should do. So with that finished, let's Control-Shift-S. Remember to save as PNG, our height_h file, and then back in Unreal Engine, let's right-click the height map and re-import. Much better. So that's cleared up almost all of the terracing. So now we've got a much nicer sort of landscape going on. Very, very cool. All right, now that we're getting somewhere, let's head back to the place mode. And in fact, we've got the outliner. I think all of our guy is quite high up. Let's just lift this landscape a bit like that. Haven't lifted it all the way. That's okay. Grab our player start, and I'll just pull him in front of this mountain here. You can hit end, and he'll snap down to ground level. And then we'll hit play. And here we are on our landscape. We've got some very realistic mountains. I mean, obviously they are. They came from the real world. That's the hook. That's the trick here. And with that set, let's do something like tweak our atmospheric fog. So we'll grab that in our outliner, head back to details. The atmospheric fog, unlike the exponential height fog, which generates fog from infinity downwards up to infinity upwards, the atmospheric fog rather kind of goes from the camera to infinity outwards. So it's a bit better suited for these big outdoor scenes. And we can tweak some settings here to make it look really striking. For example, let's change the sun multiplier here to like 2.5. That's a subtle effect. Might tweak that a bit later. We'll drop the fog multiplier down. Otherwise, it's going to look a little strange. Our distance scale, this can go down. Yeah, rock bottom. Where's the actual figure that we want? Start distance. Here we go. Bring the start distance down. How about something like 4,000? Offset can be 0. And the distance offset can come up. There we go. We'll bring this up to 4. There we go. We've got some soft fog there, and we can even tweak some of these other effects to get some different settings. Something suitable for nighttime, maybe, or like a heavy sort of weather fog. We have a color here as well, like our light color, which wouldn't really do much, I don't think. No, but if you wanted to change the color of this fog, we'll go to the outliner, grab our light source. You can change it here. So we can manipulate that to get some different fog effects. I'll just leave it at where it was for now. Where are we? Atmospheric fog. The density offset. Bring that back to normal. So there we go. So there's atmospheric fog. And if we bring the distance down a bit lower, these are all values that can be tweaked. Anyway, won't waste much more time with that. So the next thing that we can do is make our material. And we can do that with, first of all, with the height map that we created. And I've also gone and sourced 3 textures here, grass, sand, and snow. So we'll do some snow-capped mountains, we'll do the riverbed, and we'll do a general sort of ground material. So without further ado, let's just make a fresh material. Call it, we'll call it satellite landscape _ matte. And first thing is I'll just create an instance, get the landscape here, and drag this instance into our material slot. With that done, we'll want to import our height map. Just like that. Oh, the landscape's changed. It's because there's nothing in the material. But we'll get on that now. So let's open up our landscape matte. Grab all of our textures here, our height map, the sand, the snow, the grass, and drag them in. Cool. So now we're ready to get started and build out our material. So there's really nothing to it. Let's just get started. First of all, we'll need our landscape coordinates. So type landscape coords. There we go. And the only thing that we'll need to change in this node, because it works very differently to texture coordinates, there's a whole lot of other things going on with the landscape, and we'll just want to change our mapping scale. It's the only figure that we want to change. Just leave everything else at defaults. And the number that we want is the horizontal or the vertical resolution of our landscape, which in our case is 1017. This is just the horizontal and vertical resolution of the height map that we used, because we'll be using that exact same height map to derive where we put our snow and ground and such. So just make sure that we've got our figure set there in mapping scale, and then we'll plug in our landscape coords into the UVs of our height map. As for our 3 diffuse textures here, we'll do something you've probably seen me do a lot of times before. Let's get texture coordinates, a multiply node, and a scalar parameter. We'll call this one texture UV multi. Default it to, we'll start with 10. Hook this up, and then plug them into the UV slot of each of our diffuse textures. So what this is going to do is allow us to control in the instance how densely these textures are going to appear, like how often they're going to tile, and therefore how big the texture is going to appear once we're in the finished version. So put that aside for now and grab this guy. We want to increase the contrast of our material for one, but just to show you what's going on, let's plug in the results of our height map here into base color and hit save. Then back in the editor, we can see what we've got to work with. So here we've got the height map of our landscape being represented on the landscape itself. So we can sort of see how it works. We see all the colors. We see it turn to white as it gets to the tallest peaks, and perfect black as it gets down to the bottom. This shine here is just the default specular. We can fix that as we're making the material. But what we want is to increase the contrast here so that we're only getting the snow on the tops of these mountains. And luckily, it was a perfect node for doing just that. So right-click the graph again. We need cheap contrast. We'll plug in the results of our height map into the cheap contrast, the result into base color, and we'll also need to get ourselves another scalar parameter. Hold S and click. We'll call this one snow contrast. Set it to a value of 0.25 and plug this into contrast. Then we'll hit save on our material again, just to see how it looks in the editor. So once the shaders are built, there we go. We can see now the snow sort of crept up the side of the mountain. It's got a little bit of a line here, a little bit of a thing. That can be easily dealt with just by tweaking your contrast values, which you can easily do in the material instance. I'm not sure what this circle is. Let's just see if we can move some stuff away. Like, yeah, I think that's caused by the sphere capture. It is, yeah. So I'll just move that to the side, get rid of that stupid circle, put this away. And you know what, while we're here, we can even just really quickly build a reflection capture. Okay, with that sorted, let's go back to our material and we'll hook up some things into our graph here. So we'll use a simple layup. So just hold L and click. The result of our cheap contrast is going to be the alpha. The let's see, it's the snow is going to be the B value. That will be the 1. That's the white, and grass will be the A value. And I'll just readjust these so it makes a little more sense when we're looking at the nodes. And then we'll plug the result of this lerp into base color. So we'll hit save. Pretty predictable result, but we'll have a look at in the editor anyway. Once it's built, there we go. So we might need some more contrast up on the mountains here because we're getting some interesting sort of values. That's all right. We can open up our instance and we can adjust these contrast values. So if we get closer to 0, what if we go -1? -1 will just bucket it. So we're -0.1. Might have to revisit this, come back for another look. And our texture UVs seem strange. Alright, so let's go back to our material here. This will work a bit better if instead of using a multiply, we hold in D and click and get a divide. So we'll plug in our texture coordinates, our scalar, hook these guys back up. Just like that. We'll hit save. Because a multiplier is going to crank up these values and they're going to tile so finely that we won't be able to see any detail at all. But if we divide our texture, it's going to make a lot more sense. There we go. And if we hit play as we go, we can check out sort of how this grass looks to our player. Let's just wind it back a little bit. And the same goes for our snow up on the mountains here. Although for some reason, I'm not getting a lot of contrast here. We might have a second look. Alright, so all I did was swap around the contrast with a multiply and delete the clamp, and that's got us a much better sort of snow result. And we can keep upping our contrast here to increase our blend, or manipulating the UV values. Perhaps we can just isolate the snow to make it appear, a little nicer. But for now, that's going to serve our purposes just nicely. We can keep tweaking these values, keep adding more to raise that snow line. Anyway, we're ready to go forward. And the next thing we'll do is make this riverbed pop out a little bit better. And to do that, we'll have to jump back into Photoshop. So let's grab our height map here. We're going to duplicate it one more time. Bring it up. We're going to need our exposure. Let's crank up our exposure just a little bit. In fact, because we want to keep it. I didn't want to do that. Didn't want to duplicate that. We want to duplicate our exposure. And I'll put this layer here, and then we can crank up our exposure because we're trying to isolate the riverbed here. And then we'll grab our magic wand, and with our tolerance set fairly low, we can just left click once and we should be able to isolate our riverbed. Might have to click more than one time. Remember to set your magic wand to add if you're just getting pieces of it at a time. And with that done, let's make a fresh layer. Hit G for fill. We'll want to fill in our riverbed white, and then select inverse and fill in the rest of our texture in black. So that's pretty much done. That gets us our river isolated, but as you can see, we're going to get some really stark results in the editor if we leave it as is. So let's go back up to filter, blur, then a Gaussian blur, and blur it with a radius of 1 pixel, or maybe even we'll go with 1. We'll go with a radius of 1, or maybe let's say 1.2 pixels. With that set, we can Control Shift S, and remember to set as PNG. We'll call this one riverbed_h. Hit enter, and then jump back into the engine. And here we'll go import our riverbed, and drop it into our material. So with our riverbed set here, we'll basically just be using a similar lerp as we did before to isolate the channel that we're going to use our riverbed with. Pretty simple enough. Let's just get our landscape coordinates. We want to plug those into our riverbed, into the UV slot of our riverbed texture. We'll hold in L and click to get a lerp. Our riverbed will be our alpha. We want the result of our initial lerp to be our A value. That's our 0. That's where it's going to appear black. And we'll get our sand, our riverbed sand here, to be our B value. And then we'll plug the result of this lerp into base color. So with that sorted, let us hit save, and we'll have a look at how this looks in the editor. We'll let the shaders compile, and there we go. Now we have a nice riverbed down here in the bottom of our landscape, and now we can fit a water plane through the landscape here to make it appear like there's water in the riverbed. For the moment, it's just some nice color, and we can even do some more things to build out this material, such as let's what am I trying to do here? Let's hold in L and get ourselves another lerp. We'll want to get 2, the result of this one, into the A value here, and the red channel from each of our textures. So we get the red green to go into A, the red snow to go into B, and the red sand here to go into the B value here. And it might even be worth changing around some controls here. Not to take up too much more time with the material though. Let's get the result of our cheap contrast as the alpha value. See if I can make us some space here so it'll be easy to see. There we go, and the result of our riverbed here as the alpha in the second lerp. And this will go into roughness. Oh, what have I done here? There is an error. Coercion failed, float 3 to float. Ah, that's fine. So we'll just delete those two. We'll come out of this lerp into a desaturate and plug that into roughness. Let's go quick and dirty. We could have masked out the texture samples. We could have done a whole bunch of different stuff, but we'll just do the super quick result. With that saved, we'll come back here, and now we have roughness. So it's a bit glossy, a bit shiny, easy enough to fix. We'll come out of the desaturate into a 1-, which is just a little node that's going to invert the values coming into it. Plug that into roughness, hit save, and then back in the editor we should see it look a little bit more realistic. And of course from here you can go ahead and add in your normal maps, some displacement even, if you've got some rocky surfaces. We can further use other heightmap altering textures to get like a rocky sort of mountain surface here in the middle areas. But for now, that pretty much covers it. In fact, let's see if we can just make the snow look a little bit better. But disconnect this, but we'll duplicate all of these guys. Call this one the snow texture multi. Plug that into the snow UVs. And once that's saved, we'll go back to the editor and we will crank this value up quite a bit higher, just so that the snow looks a little bit more natural. Something like that. I dig it. So we'll save that instance, and yeah, we're about done here. So this is how you use real-world satellite data to create your landscapes in Unreal Engine without using anything like no world machine, no extra apps, nothing like that. We just got ourselves a height map from the internet and we put it straight into the engine and made ourselves some realistic mountains. So I hope this helps you guys. I will catch you in the next one. I'll put a link in the description with all of these textures here for you to download if you'd like to have a play with them yourself, or use the height maps that I made as some practice textures. But other than that, yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.